children! Welcome to today's Sunday school class. It's yet another beautiful Sunday that the Lord has blessed us with, a day that we should rejoice and be glad in Him. And today I will be your teacher. My name is Teacher Sharon. And before we start, we are going to say a word of prayer. So before we pray, we put our hands together, we close our eyes, and we bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come before your presence this wonderful morning. We want to say thank you for the gift of life and also for this opportunity that you blessed us with, able to hear from you. I pray that Lord, you're going to give us an amazing class, give us understanding, and help us to have fun. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, kama kawaida, before we start our lesson, we are going to sing a song. So, we are going to sing a song that talks about letting our light shine to the world because we are the light, right? So, yeah, let's sing.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Jesus is the light, I'm gonna let him shine. Jesus is the light, I'm gonna let him shine. Jesus is the light, I'm gonna let him shine. Let him shine, let him shine, let him shine.
Okay, so we are going to get straight into the lesson for today. And before we begin our class, I want us to ask ourselves a question. Are there times you ever wondered whether Jesus actually heard you? Whether Jesus actually hears you when you pray? Or whether Jesus actually sees you when you're in trouble or when you're praying or you're asking something from Him? Do you ever wonder whether Jesus really hears you? Well, we are going to find the answer to that question today. In today's lesson, we are going to look at a Bible story about Hagar and Ishmael. Now, once upon a time, long time ago, there was a woman called Hagar. Hagar had a son called Ishmael. Now, Hagar and Ishmael were chased away from the place where they used to stay. They were chased away from their home. And so they had a task to go look for a place to stay. But around the places where they were going to look for it was a desert. And in the desert, people really don't stay in the desert because in the desert it is normally so hot. The sun is always shining. It is so hot, and at night it is very cold. And another thing, in the desert, because it is so hot, it's very difficult to find water. It's difficult to find vegetation where you can get food from. So it's not a nice place to stay at. Actually, this is how a desert looks like. It's a picture of a desert. So you can see the desert. It only has some very dry plants called cactus. It's always very hot, and I don't know whether you can see there. It can't even support life. You see, there's a dead animal there. So it was a very difficult place to go and look for a home. So here you can see Hagar and the son Ishmael. Now, when they were in the desert, because there was no water, they were really suffering. They were very thirsty and they were also very hungry. But in the desert, there was no water and there was no food. And this made Hagar very worried because the son was getting very thirsty and she was also getting very thirsty. But the water that they had carried from the home that they were in had already gotten over, so they had to look for water. But in the desert, it was very difficult to get the water. So Hagar was in so much distress and she saw her son suffering and she could not be able to stand seeing her son Ishmael suffering. So what she did, she took her son Ishmael and took him to a bush, and she placed him there in the bush. And Ishmael was in so much distress. He was hungry, he was thirsty, he was feeling hot. There was no other place to go, and he cried. Ishmael cried. He cried to God, and Hagar as well left the son there at the bush and also went and wept very bitterly. Here we can see Hagar crying to God. Hagar is wailing and crying to God. And there at the back, at the far back, she has placed Ishmael, her son, at the bush. Now, as they were both in distress and crying and were awaiting for a miracle to happen, an angel of the Lord spoke to Hagar and visited them and said, I have heard the cry of your son Ishmael, and I have seen the amount of distress that you're in. So what happened? The angel of the Lord was able to open Hagar's eyes. And in front of her, was a well. A well is a place where you can find water. So God had answered their prayer. God had really answered their prayer. So they were able to get enough water to sustain them. And God also provided a place for them to stay. And they were able to live, they were able to find a place to stay, and they were able to live happily ever after. Actually, the Bible says that Ishmael, when he grew up, he became an archer. An archer is someone who uses a bow and an arrow. So he became an amazing warrior. So sometimes maybe you can ask yourself, and sometimes you may feel like God doesn't hear you, maybe because you're young, maybe because you're a child. But from today's story, we can see that when Ishmael was at the bush in the desert together with the mother Hagar, and they did not have anything, they did not have the food, they did not have water, God was able to hear Ishmael's prayer. He had Ishmael's cry when he was in distress, and that means God can hear you when you pray. When you ask God for something, he cares and he listens. If you need anything from God, it could be you'd like a new dress, it could be you need money for fees, it could be you're feeling unwell and you'd like to get healed, just ask from Jesus, because Jesus actually hears you. And Jesus sees you. He sees where you are at. He sees the situation you're in. He knows the challenges that you're going through. However difficult it may be, Jesus sees you and he hears you and he loves you and he cares for you. And the same way he took care of Ishmael and the mother while they were in the desert is the same way he's going to take care of you. So for today's memory verse, it comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 16, verse 13. And it says, you are the God who sees me. So let's say it together. Memory verse, Genesis chapter 16, verse 13. It says, you are the God who sees me. Let's say it together again. Memory verse, Genesis chapter 16, verse 13. It says, you are the God who sees me. I hope that has been an encouragement for you today, and I hope you've also enjoyed today's class. So thank you for staying and for listening to today's class so we can appreciate yourselves. Yay! And also appreciate me, your teacher. Yay! So until next time, be blessed, have an amazing week, and remember to be obedient. Do not disobey mommy and daddy. For those who have assignments, remember to do your assignments. Yeah, so have an amazing week, and I love you all so much. Bye bye.